Welcome to LeCorner, La Source's digital show dedicated to the sport and entertainment industry. Every 2 weeks, we invite a professional to share their experience, background, and challenges. The sport industry moves fast, and having their insights is the best way to keep up to speed. Welcome to LeCorner.
Building a professional football female league is a tough task, especially a decade ago when nothing was there and you had it to build from scratch. This is basically what Mariana Gutierrez did in 2017 in Mexico with Liga MX Femenil. In today's episode, we received Mariana to talk about our exciting journey, unique challenges, and all the business opportunities related to that league. Have a pleasant listening. Hello, Mariana. Welcome to a new episode of LeCorner. I would have loved to say good afternoon, but I think it's rather good morning on your end. So welcome on the podcast.
Thank you.
How are you?
Thank you for your time. Yes, we're in Mexico and it's morning time for us.
Yeah. As a tradition, we like to start a bit the podcast by the guest giving a brief presentation of himself or herself, because I'm quite bullish, I have to be honest, and having now a female speaker, that's something we are missing a lot in our industry. So I give you the floor to give us a short presentation of yourself.
Thank you, Jean-Baptiste. And remind me later on that I can share with you a lot of women that are changing the game and advocates for the sports. So happy to do that. I'm Mariana Gutierrez. I'm head of the Liga MX Femenil. That means that this is the women's professional football league in Mexico. Currently, we are the most popular women's league in the region. That means of Latin America, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been here since 2016. I'm the former, let's say, coordinator for national amateur leagues in our member association,
Okay.
Mexican football. And that was since 2015. So probably I've been developing a few years now women's football in our most important
In the country.
government body. That's the member association and the professional league.
So when you moved to the league, the idea was to say, okay, the league was had the intention to create the female competition, and so they recruited you so that you had the full, I would not say blank page, but the full support to actually launch a new competition on the female side.
Exactly.
On the
That's a very interesting question, and it would give us a great context. If I had to describe what actually happened, is like corporate entrepreneurship, right? It's been male dominant. Historically, we have our core business was developing men's competitions, right? So when I joined the member association, FMF, that's how we say it here.
Mm-hmm.
I had an entrepreneurship past developing women's competition, amateur. And when they asked me to join, they already had this strategy, this vision, this purpose-driven of developing women's football in our country. And the first step was let's develop the base, the grassroots. Let's start with amateur leagues because we need to make it visible. The Mexican Federation used to say in that moment that we were in a high debt with our women's sports or women's game. And so I joined first developing the grassroots. And later on, 1.5 years later, I joined the league because in that period, we also were doing the research of how should we create and launch this professional league.
Okay.
It was a lot of research time, a lot of lobbying with the stakeholders, how we should plan this, which is our audience, our customers, our fan base, etc., etc.
Yeah, I have a few questions on that because I think it's I have two, but let's take the first one. It's usually a chicken and egg. Is it? Did you do the competition to actually try to drive revenues and showcase that there is a business case there, so that also you can have revenues to then cascade down to the grassroots? Or you had the strong political will, but what was the idea of the league? It was to say, more than the grassroots, we need also a flagship event for communication to make sure like all the girls and all the, let's say, the fans, whether male or female, can actually watch female football and have a business case. But what was the I don't know how to say that, but we had the same discussions back in the days as well at UEFA. So it was on the chicken and egg, like the competition was some kind of a flagship to help on the grassroots, or it was more the grassroots that really helped in terms of maturing the market and then go with the
You
competition?
explain yourself perfectly, and I would say it's an excellent question because we have to say that women and girls have been playing football a long time. It's not that massive as in the men's side because we all know why, no? That we didn't have the space and the proper competitions where we could held it, and obviously the cultural part, no? So we understood that representation matters, viewership matters. This showcase that you're talking about, it was important because in parallel, we had a very strong national team development pathway. They've been, and curiously, and I would say it's not a funny thing to say, but it's curious that since we launched the league, we've not qualified to a World Cup. We didn't qualify to France, and we didn't qualify to Australia.
So many competitions.
Exactly. We launched the competition and we started finding a lot of issues we had of how we had built that pathway because we didn't have a competition, right? So we had very good players here that didn't fit in the amateur level now, no? So we had to do a competition for those players.
A professional.
Exactly.
Okay. In terms of pathway, it was more like the elite transition and more the professional side of
Exactly.
things.
Now,
Okay, I understand.
we did lack of that pathway for the whole pool of players, right? That became our biggest challenge. And we can see till now that we don't have players that have been involved in the elite system from a young age, right? The girls' academies, we've launched our youth competition, but that was our biggest challenge. Who were going to be the players? We had the stakeholders, we had the broadcasters, we had the political willing, as you were saying, but how we were going to select those players, who were the ones that play, who draft for their clubs, etc., etc. So I believe.
Do you have an answer on that? Is it because they were moving to? I was thinking, like you said, it's the biggest in LATAM. Is it because North America and especially the US, which is a very strong, I would say, female football country, and with like top clubs and all of that? Is it because the top players from Mexico were moving to the US or to Canada, or was it something? Do you have an answer to that, or have you found something around this professional pathway where there was this gap?
Well, the gap obviously was USA. I could even say Costa Rica, Canada in the national team, but USA had a leverage of 30 years of development. They also have Title IX.
Okay.
They have a lot of public policies that help develop the women's sports, right? But on the other hand, the leverage for us was the whole region was lacking of women's football or professional leagues, professional or elite competitions, pathways, etc. So right now we're home for 40 foreign players that are born and raised on those regions. Like I would say, we have a lot of Costa Rican players, Colombians, a lot of Latin American people with us. But on the other hand, I think it's important that a competitive advantage we have is that the top ranked countries, like the World Cup champions and the Olympics champions, are our neighbors, right? So that gives us huge leverage to learn
to compete.
To study best practices. A lot of study cases we had, no? But there's something very important that differentiates us from every single league we've known. And it's how our governing body was built and how our competition, we structure our business model. And that's because we would say that our governing body is the professional league. So the professional Liga MX is the regulatory body for the three professional leagues, men's, women's, and I would say it's like a second division competition, right? And it was mandatory for the 18 affiliated clubs for the men's side to launch their women's side. So they invest in both divisions, in both competitions. And that for us till now has been the biggest competitive advantage because we have the willing, we have the knowledge, we know what formula works and what doesn't. And also we have a lot of weaknesses that we need to work on, like our core business was developing males competition. And like the same thing, but it's not. So we had to build new rules. We had to change and transform our regulations for like small details that are actually very important for women's rights. We didn't have any.
But did the clubs decide? So I guess like in every professional leagues, all the clubs they sit in the board.
Yeah.
And back in 2016, 17, they were like, okay, we need to have like a female competition. So they decided by themselves, we need to make it unique, different. And so all the clubs will have their own female division or female academy, and they would have to play in the first league on the women's side. So they all decided that, right? But what drove I'm going back to that because that was the second question I had is I understand why, I understand why they would do it. Were there like external factors where, I don't know, in the past decades, you were like, okay, that's an important business case, or that's something that we need to develop because we see the likes of FC Barcelona or the Olympique Lyonnais or Wolfsburg in Europe, where they were like, okay, this kind of elite top clubs, they manage also to have elite top female section, which drives also maybe you were mentioning the specificity of the business case. So I'm trying to see why by themselves 18 clubs and I think 18 male dominated an executive board would say, okay, we go there. Is it because they have seen what was working outside, or what was the behind it?
Amazing question. I think it's a bunch of things. The first thing I would say is being neighbors with USA is a huge, huge advantage. And let me tell you why. Because we've seen the future. For us, watching how sports develop in USA has taught us a huge lesson about sports business, right? So we have very smart owners with a lot of vision that they understand where they want to take their clubs. And that vision helps us with the lobbying to push forward this business model because, as you know, for example, with the men's side, they launched a new competition called the Leagues Cup, and the Leagues Cup is
Yeah.
basically a joint venture with the MLS. And it's because 60 million Mexicans, Hispanic people, are living in the USA that love our league. And that happens the same to Mexico and has to do with feelings. It's this fan base we have in the region that basically goes back to back to basics. We love sports, we love football, we love our teams, right? And it doesn't matter if we're
Watch.
talking about youth teams. It doesn't matter if it doesn't have to do with gender, anything. It has to do with love for the game, right? And love for your team. So on one hand, this was one of the purpose driven, and the other thing I would say very important was the cultural change we've been having in our country. And there's been a lot of advocacy, a lot of accountability, a lot of fighting for equal rights, a bunch of things, gender equality. That when you have a country like Mexico that eats, breathes football, what happens is that it makes sense, right? You just will like repeat the successful formula we have in the men's side, and then
On that, what do you copy or do different? Like I get it from the. I mean, I see the time, the total addressable market. I see also the passion behind it in terms of how you play, how you live, especially Latin America and Mexico being neighbors to the US. And I know there is the FIFA World Cup in 2026, so I guess there is also all this kind of uh, background that helps in terms of decision making. But on the maybe sponsorship podcast or you see the potentially the Americans, like you said, like we see the path to success, but you say you do it also in a unique way. So what is the thing that you tend to copy or maybe to do differently, depending also on your specificities?
I would say, first of all, governing body, the board, the General Assembly, it's very important. We do a lot of lobby because our clubs are those that work with the players, or those that it's their daily basis to develop the game. So having a board like that helps us a lot to push forward women's sports, because you have the owners investing in it, all the 18, the same 18. So that is fundamental. It's a breakthrough. The other, and I would say milestone, is the men's side has a very successful youth youth team structure, right? So they have a lot of categories that have been playing, and how they've been developing on for the past 10 years, no? And and it's important to say that the professional league, it's unbundled from the member association, but they get along. We're friends, right? We actually work in the same building. And for the women's, as you can see worldwide, the majority of the leagues are
By the member
by the
association.
member association.
It's
So being unbundled from the member association, but bundled with the professional league, I would say it's the thing that we copied that gave us a lot of excellent outcomes. The other one is trying to copy the youth pathway, but with our own footprint, right? Because girls develop very differently. No, we have a menstrual cycle, we have hormones that impact the game in younger ages, no? Like in teenagers. We have very bad injuries, no, that will take you out of the field for basically a year.
months. Okay.
So how we studied, research, how we were gonna build our youth program is a little bit different, but with kind of the same goal. So we want to deliver all these categories, but we launch our youth 17 competition. So all 18 have to have their youth academy, right? And those, it started as a youth 17, and this season it's going to become a youth 19. So It's been a pathway. We started U17, then U18, and now U19, because it was important to mitigate some costs, but also we want to learn how the player evolves, develops in this environment. What happens most of the time is that a lot of players quit, women's or girls quit 13, 14 years old, probably when they go into high school, right? That change, it's a very important change for a woman.
Why the big drop?
I would say a lot of things, because it's the most important change as a woman, no hormones, basically. But it also has to do with your social environment.
Social.
And that's when you recognize or you find out if you want to become a professional or not. No, if you want to quit parties, if you want to quit hanging out with your friends.
Yeah.
Because with the men's side, we were used to it. And with the women's side, and it also has to do with this capped salaries, no, that we have worldwide. That if you don't earn that type of money, you will be doubting if you want to become a professional athlete, right? So I would say those it's a decision making.
There's difference
at a young age. So we wanted to see how they would adapt to the environment, and also because we didn't want the gap to be too big with the first team, right? So we launched the first team. We've seen particular insights that we've been trying to work with. So that would be the.
So that was for the competitive balance and so the overall product, so that at least you have like fair games. I mean, more like competitive games, so that it's a bit more tight.
So I would say that for the women's side, we kind of pivot when we discover something new, but with the basics that we've been doing, like regulations, no, and I would say that thanks to the women's side, we are launching our new protocol policy for sexual harassment. It's an anti-policy because it again has to do with how you've been developing your social environment, your culture, country, behaviorals. So now we will have this protocol for all the competitions, no? And
on that, would you say that the female game is also in competition, is helping a bit to have room for, I don't know if it's innovation, but room for testing new ideas, or for like where in the men's game it's a bit more like, there's more at stake, or it's also like historically it has been there for 30, 40 years. Here you have everything to develop. And so every time I'm hearing there's a new policy or everything, it's also like you're starting maybe from a blank page, or you see things differently, or that players see things differently.
Exactly.
Does that happen too? Yeah. Okay.
That's why I wanted to start when I mentioned that it was like a corporate entrepreneurship, no? Because let's see this like a separate business unit that it's like a baby sister. And we're flexible because every time we want to validate our hypotheses, for example, we learn a bunch of things, we measure, and then we pivot. No, it's like talking about lean startup. It's basically the same. And I would say that because of that, we proposed our board a very innovative thing, very disruptive for our country, because it's not something innovative for the world. That it's we proposed a centralized business unit, because in the men's side it's decentralized. We have 18 independent clubs, like 18 business units, that they will negotiate all of their deals, broadcast, image, sponsorships, etc.
Individual basis.
Exactly. So our board accepted this and last General Assembly.
So you will be collectively selling the rights, being sponsorship or broadcast and all of that. That was about what I was about to ask, because you are referring to a startup. So are you coming to a certain maturity level? Because I've seen the Nike deal as well. Usually there is a bundle between the men's and the female, where usually the league, they go out to the market and agencies tend to sell it as a bundle and say, okay, that's you take it for the men's and you will have it for the female. But I've seen like you've managed to also sell exclusively for the female league to Nike. So are you to a certain level of maturity where you can say, okay, we collectively gather all the rights so that we can create more value that we redistribute to all the teams? That's it?
Yeah. So that's the outcome of centralizing everything, right? Because now we have valued our assets and learned that we can build new assets, no, in the side. And the first thing was a match ball, because for many years we've been bundled with an excellent, and I have to say it, partner like Void, Mexican ball, actually, very proud about it. And but then Nike came along, and a lot of things happened because it was a statement. It was a statement that this is our first asset, and we can bring a lot of them together. And Nike, for next season, will become one of our second main sponsors. The first one is, I would say, today it's BBVA.
Yeah.
It's a very special sponsor. It's our biggest partner because they sponsor all the competitions. They want to be the bank of the Mexican football, no matter gender, no matter anything, right? So that's a very special sponsorship. But Nike has very clear vision and purpose and goals with the women's league. So it makes sense to partner with them. And they also are partners with NWSL and Women's League Soccer in UK, right? So I would say now that we're very proud that we are starting to see those outcomes. But the other thing that it's very important to mention, and this is why it's disruptive, is the two main broadcasters of our country own clubs. Okay? So
how many? Just one each? So the owner of certain clubs have, okay, one each.
This is important to mention because that's why each club has their own deals, right? I know we've seen kind of these things in Europe. No, we know a couple of presidents that own or regulate broadcasters, right? So you can imagine what are the challenges, but instead of being a challenge for the women's sport, it became a leverage because the broadcasters, since moment one,
fully committed,
held our hand, and had viewership. And now I would say that's been a breakthrough because what we've seen with other leagues in the world, they're still fighting for those viewership, for that reach. We have it in Mexico. We have streaming, we have open TV, we have linear, we have pay TV. And so we have a very important strategy for viewership, right? So that when we centralize it, these owners approved it because it made sense that the more eyes, the more audience, the better sponsorships, and that domino effect.
And beyond the eyeball, I was wondering, like, I see clearly the eyeball and the thing that also you bring potentially new customers. So you are serving the avid fans. So maybe this male that has been consuming football and practicing it for years, but maybe now you touch also new categories or new demographics with like female being young kid or more adult ones. But beyond the eyeball, I was wondering whether in the sponsorship or in the broadcast, they were also seeing the opportunity for them to innovate or to have some breakthrough. I'm thinking about Nike, but also the broadcasters in terms of how they potentially broadcast the game or make it different to potentially also test, just like what you were saying from a pure like startup perspective?
So that's an interesting question, because when you launch a professional competition, no matter which one,
Mm.
well, you obviously touch a lot of points. You find pain points, but also right now, for example, that we are analyzing our fan journey, no, we've been discovering a lot of things. But when you measure, then you realize how many other points you're touching. And what I basically want to say is that broadcasters also had to find their talent, as we had to find our players. They had to find their talent, right? Because they were male dominant.
Yeah.
They were their core business, their experience was male competitions. No, so imagine launching a new competition.
So you're thinking the storytelling, they also needed
Yeah,
not translators, but people that could tell a story for female.
analyze the games, commentate the games. So that was another huge challenge. No, it's not the same that you say, well, why? Hey, Cristiano has the ball. Oh, substitution. Messi's coming in. That when you're commentating a game where you never known the players. No, so as a league, we also had to help um, our stakeholders for that viewership. No, so the broadcasters were avid about it. So they needed information, they needed research. We did that analytics to basically feed the content. No,
Okay, I understand.
so yeah, it's
And Mariana, I wanted to ask you, like, because I know you will have to leave, so I have so many questions, and maybe we'll have a time for a second one. But given the time we have, I was thinking, what, like you've mentioned this on the broadcast sites, what is the main challenge, or what are the main challenges that you are facing now? That, I mean, you've been on a 6 year journey. I guess there are plenty in terms of like delivery operations, kind of this new business model as well to, I would say, not to prove, but to grow. What would be the key challenge for you, and what do you see also in the coming next years, knowing that you have the 2020, I mean 2023 in Australia and 2026 Males World Cup in the US, like, and a bit in Mexico too.
so I would answer that question in three ways differently. No,
Yeah.
the first one, I would say, let's talk about social impact. One of our biggest challenge is changing mindsets. No, fitting in, belonging, um,
Mm,
gaining more viewership. No, I would say now we're a niche, and we want to become a massive industry. We're
okay.
developing a new industry. And when I say that, let's now approach it from the business side. And from the business side, I would say investment. So let's go back to the corporate entrepreneurship. You know, when you're trying to like explore things, and you fail, and you pivot, and you fail again, it's very expensive to do that, right? So our owners in Mexico, how sports is structured, basically, I would say the two main stakeholders that are doing all the investment are the owners and the broadcasters, right? So, as a business model, you need KPIs, you need a return of investment. And when you don't have the return of investment, it's very difficult to sustain. So the challenge would be, let's keep growing, but it has to be sustainable, right? So now we're in that period where the challenge is, hey guys, now we have to sell those assets, but with a fair price.
So you need to showcase the value to a certain extent. I mean, in terms of ROI, you need these kind of quick wins, like on the pathway, like showcasing the value short term, so that after you can still invest to grow where you want
But
to
I
reach.
would say that there's a tricky part in there, right? Because we change our owner's mindset, we change the broadcast mindset, we're actually changing our fan base mindset, but now we're missing the brands. The brands look at us, and I would say this as worldwide, as social responsibility, right? And so the amount of investment, it's very difficult to develop because they like to compare us. No, es que the men's side is delivering all this KPIs, this reach, all this return,
the viewership or stuff.
Yeah, guys, but it's the amount of investment you're doing 100 years ago in the men's side. It's not fair to compare it in the women's side. So basically, I always say we are a startup. We're in initiating. No, it's in the rough time. We're capital seed, etc., etc. And that's like the biggest challenge. No, that our
invest to create your market of tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's more or less what you're also saying to the brands, I guess.
And it's because you just said it. No, it's not the brand's fault because they live from the market. They are fed by the market, driven by the market. And if we don't increase those numbers of the market, we get out of the niche and become massive, we cannot have that kind of investment. So basically, it's a lot of lobbying and convincing a lot of people that invest in the women's game. And I would say that is a worldwide thing. And so what we did is a strategy to showcase our league as the most important league in the region, one of the 3 most important leagues in the world, because there's a serious investment from our owners, from the broadcasters. And now we're seeing those outcomes, right? We have Nike on board, and we're negotiating with a lot of brands that will come on board too. But it takes time. So I would say those are the biggest challenges for us right now.
Okay. And what's like, okay, I think we need to end up here, but last questions, I cannot do without it. What's the biggest success, or what is the thing you are the most proud of across this journey, or something you would recommend to anybody? I mean, something positive that you have in mind.
As a league, I would say there's a lot of milestones, a lot. I mean, I remember that when we launched the league, there was only one team like investing, spending, etc. And now we have 18 teams that invest in strategies, research. They're developing players. They sign top players worldwide. No, like America with former Barcelona players, or Tigres that bring and sell in the market, transfer top players to the NWSL. Pachuca also bringing top players like Charlene Corral and Jennifer Hermoso.
And I see partnerships as well with like European clubs and stuff also happening more.
Exactly.
And more.
No, they're bringing alliances to strengthen the game. No, to level up. And I'm very proud, basically, to launch the league. I think as Mexicans, as a league, we should be very proud that where we were standing, our position, let's say, we should be very proud of what we've built. Another thing as a league, I would say I'm very proud of the team we've built here, that they're purpose driven. They believe in the game. And that willingness, that accountability has been very helpful. And finally,
that's what makes you drive, I guess. That's what makes you push the boundaries.
Push, but also be tolerant and patient, because it's not easy. No, when there's no money coming in, the cash inflows, for example, it's not easy to sustain a business. And so that means I'm very proud also of the owners that been like delivering an amazing showcase. And finally, and most important, is the cultural transformation we've done. No, launching the youth academy, the youth competition, launching this policy, anti-harassment policy, launching a lot of policies that are helping us advocate for gender equality, for example. All of them are belonging. there's a lot of visibility for a bunch of things like LGBTQ plus members, community. So I'm also very proud of what this league has not also built, but what they've been showcasing around to advocate for a change, right?
Cool. Honestly, like I didn't know there was before we started. I didn't know there were that much things. So I think I have to say congrats on the bigger scheme or the comprehensiveness of it in terms of like maturity and how it has grown. Listen, Mariana, I think it's you've already like passed the time by 2 minutes, so I don't want to. We knew it was going to be short. I'm super excited. I mean, I like it, so might be like in contact to do like a second episode later on because I have still lots of questions. But thank you for the time. I know it's early morning, so thank you for making it, and thanks for sharing all that insights.
Oh, happy to share what we're building here in Mexico with you, Jean Baptiste, with your audience. Amazed that we received this opportunity from the other part of the world. No, very far away from Mexico, but believe me, I think we are seeing a lot of changes for our sport. So thank you for your time, and very happy to do a second edition.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We hope you enjoy it as much as we love creating them. If you like the episode, feel free to comment, rate, and share with people around you. You can visit our website, www.lastsource.io, to learn more about our activities. You will discover a wide range of articles and can subscribe to our newsletter to receive the latest tech and sports news in your mailbox every month. Stay tuned for new episodes.
Le Corner.